G'day, Jason the Middle-Aged Gear Junkie here. In the world of fuzz, there are many different designs, but there's only really two titans, and that's the Fuzz Face and the Big Muff. But what's the difference? So here's my bass tone. I'm using my Epiphone Sheridan with Gibson Pro Buckers. I'm going to split the neck pickup to get some Stradier sounds later on. And I'm running through my Marshall DSL 40. Now I'm going to use both the clean channel and one of the drive channels so that I can show you what these pedals sound like going into a clean amp and also going into a dirty amp. So here's my bass tone. And for the overdriven channel. Now, it's important to point out here that both of those channels share the same EQ, so the EQ curve has not changed from one channel to the other. Before we go through and start establishing the differences between the Fuzz Face and the Big Muff, I think it's important that we establish what is the Fuzz Face sound and what is the Big Muff sound. So we're going to start off with the Fuzz Face. So on the floor in front of me, you can see a few different Fuzz Faces. I have the full-size Germanium Fuzz Face. I have a Silicon Mini Fuzz Face, also by Jim Dunlop. And then I have a couple of what we consider as modified Fuzz Face circuits. So there's the Blues Pro by MI Audio. Now this is an overdrive and a fuzz pedal, so it has a mode selector switch. And to my ear, the fuzz sound from this sounds very much like a Fuzz Face. So if you think I'm wrong, please let me know. And last of all, I have the Stiletto by Buffalo Effects. Now this was lent to me by the guys at Pastfx, who I reached out to try and get some pedals off for this video, and they sent me this, and I'm very, very grateful. This is an amazing modified Fuzz Face. I'm going to start off with the Germanium Fuzz Face. As you can hear, we've had a fair bit of a drop in volume there. So as with a lot of Fuzz Face type pedals, you've really got to slam that volume up. All right, let's check out how much fuzz it's got. So it is pretty undefined. I mean, that's on the bridge humbucker. So usually that'd be fairly growly, but it's really softening the attack of my notes. If I put it into the split neck position, into the single core position, now I'm going to try that again, but through the drive channel of the amplifier. Oh, that's so compressed now. It's so squished. There's no dynamic range anymore. Yeah, it's very, very squished. One of the things that Fuzz Faces are popular for is the way that they react to your volume pot. So you can set the fuzz all the way up and then just use your volume pot to go between clean and dirty sounds. And this is the way a lot of guitarists back in the day used to use these. Here's the mini silicon fuzz face. And once again, we've got that massive volume drop, so I'm just going to have to attenuate that with the volume control. Now, some drive pedals get brighter the more gain that you wind into them, and I think that's definitely true here of the fuzz faces. And it's more prevalent with this silicon one because the silicon fuzz faces have more gain than the germanium ones. So this one's probably got about 15 to 20% more gain to my ear than a germanium one does, and therefore I find it to be a bit brighter as well. Once again, if I put that fuzz through the distortion channel, it sounds pretty undefined and very messy. So let's see if this cleans up like the germanium fuzz does. When you turn the volume all the way down, you get this. It's one of the quirks of these types of pedals. But I would say that's a lot brighter. Yeah, I don't think this particular silicon fuzz face cleans up anywhere near as good as the germanium one does. So here's the Blues Pro with all knobs at noon. Whoa, that does not need any volume boost. In fact, it needs a volume cut. All right, let's see how much fuzz it's got. So it's got clean right up to this sort of really woolly. That's gating actually a lot, so. And I think that's got something to do with the way that they've set up the tone knob. So instead of being a tone knob, I think this is more like a bias control. Yeah, that's definitely a bias control. So what a bias control does is it controls how much voltage is going to the pedal. One of the things that a lot of people like about fuzz faces is that when you're running them off a battery and the battery starts to get low, it can't power the pedal effectively and it starts to crap out and starts to really sort of mess with your guitar signal. And I think what a bias control does is it does the same thing. It allows you to cut the amount of voltage going to the transistors and you get this sort of really gated fuzz. We call it a Velcro sound. And it sounds like your guitar signal's broken. Seems to have more sustain than either of the Fuzz Faces did. But yeah, it's a lot of fun to play. That just sounds so cool. And listen to how quiet that is. I mean, this is with the fuzz all the way up. It's fairly quiet compared to the Fuzz Face Mini. All right, and here's the Stiletto. It's fairly close to unity gain. See how much gain it has? All right, does it clean up? Yeah, so this one sounds really cool. It's not got the most amount of gain, but it's definitely a usable amount of gain. The Stiletto also has a bias control, and this is a big feature on this pedal, I think. So we can really starve that voltage and get the thing to crap out, or we could make it sound more like a traditional Fuzz Face style pedal. With the bias all the way down, which means the voltage is all the way down, I mean, it's completely quiet, it's completely gated, and it only makes sound if I just strum a fairly hard. And then it's gone. That's such a cool sound. It just sounds like an amplifier that's just not working properly. Oh, I love it. It's a lot of fun. Once again, you get that really Velcro-y type sound. Okay, that cut control is really sort of making it wild and woolly. So with it all the way down, it sounds more like a traditional Fuzz Face. Sounds to me like a bass cut. This is a lot of fun to play this pedal. I love it. So now we're going to swap over to the Big Muff family. So I have here the Big Muff Pi, which is the big box one there. I have the Big Muff Triangle next to it, which is a reissue of the original Big Muff that came out. Then there's the Huge Swollen Pickle, which I think is a Russian Big Muff, or a modification of the Russian Big Muff. And then there's the Patriot, which is a modified version of the Civil War Big Muff. Here's my clean sound again. And with the volume half of the way up there, it's still at unity gain. So unlike the Fuzz Face where I had to crank up the volume, I don't have to do that with this. Now the other controls there are tone and sustain. So the Fuzz Face pedals didn't usually come with a tone control. That is one thing that is different about the Big Muff, but it is rather an infamous tone control because when you turn it down, you cut treble and boost bass at the same time. And when you turn it up, you cut bass and boost treble at the same time. So it's a very, very tricky little tone knob to get right. Sustain is the amount of distortion that this pedal has. Because these pedals compress so hard, they create a lot of sustain. So you can really hold notes until they start to feed back and self-oscillate very, very easily, even at low volume. If I was to put that through the distortion channel, interesting there. That I think it has a bigger difference with the Big Muff than it did with the Fuzz Face. We get a lot more mid-range all of a sudden. And we get a lot of that, a lot less of the sizzling top end. Yeah, it really does sort of narrow the frequency response of the Big Muff a hell of a lot, which is kind of surprising because it's the EQ stack is exactly the same. But it also drops in volume, and that's partly because we're sending a very compressed signal into a channel that's going to compress it even more. So we really are limiting the dynamic range by doing that. Big Muff has a really thick sound because it's got a lot of bottom end and it's got a lot of top end. It's a little bit scooped in the mids though. We don't have as much mid-range definition in the sound. And I think that's part of the reason why a lot of the guys from the sort of 90s alternative scene really like this, because it was really thick and it helped to fill out the sound. You didn't have to play really definite, intricate guitar lines with it because they'd get lost. So, you know, by playing just really sort of chunky rhythms, it really helped to bring that out. Here's the Big Muff Triangle. It's quite loud. It sounds a little bit more mid-rangey than the Big Muff Pi. Yeah, once again, it's got that very, very thick sort of sound. The EQ seems to work the same as the Big Muff Pi. And it's just got years of sustain. It's definitely got a smoothness to it, especially on that neck single coil setting. So the guys from Pastfx actually sent me a little surprise. So when they were sending me the Stiletto to do this video, they actually packed in as well this replica of the original Big Muff Triangle, which is called the Elf Sustainer by Roshi pedals in Japan. And this is supposed to be a part-for-part replica of the Big Muff Triangle. Whoa. That is really thick. Oh yeah, that's I like the EHX Big Muff Triangle, but this one's just a bit more lively. I think it's got a little bit more mid-range to it. Oh, I love that. That's amazing. I'm going to switch back to the bridge humbucker. So next up, we've got the Swollen Pickle Mark III. Whoa, that is a massive jump in volume, so I'm just going to have to attenuate that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the way Huge Swollen Pickle is based on the Russian Big Muffs that were made in the early to mid 90s. They were manufactured in Russia using Russian parts, so they sounded slightly different. Being a modified version, it gives you a little bit more flexibility over your tone. Now, these smaller versions, instead of having dials, they have switches. They have one for crunch and one for scooped. The scoop mode will scoop out in the mid-range, and the crunch mode will reduce the amount of compression. So let's have a listen to that. Although this is just supposed to control the amount of compression, I also feel it changes the tone. I think that when it's in the up position, you lose a little bit of that aggressive upper mids and highs. And also, I think it becomes a little bit more tame. Yeah, that sounds huge. All right, let's check out the scoop switch. So the scoop switch will scoop out the mid-range. Yeah, I like it with a bit more mid-range. I prefer it with the switch down. Apparently, when you have both switches down, it's supposed to sound like a normal full-size swollen pickle. Last of all, I have the Pastfx Patriach, which is also a very heavily modified Big Muff. This one's got a lot more mid-range than any of the others. So the controls on this are a little bit different. So we have a mids control and a lows control, and we also have a tone control. So if you want it to sound like a normal muff, all you have to do is turn the mids and the lows all the way down, and you have a Civil War Big Muff. The tone control acts kind of like your treble control. So that's why it doesn't have a treble control. But I love the fact that it's got a lot more mid-range. I think the extra flexibility, particularly with the mid-range with this pedal, makes it the best for single note lines out of any of the Big Muff pedals that I've got here. Now that we've established what both fuzzes sound like, I'm now going to compare how they are different from one another. To be accurate, we're going with the companies that make the actual Fuzz Face and Big Muff. I'm going to use both pedals to play some chords, a riff, and some lead lines. So for the chords, I'm using the bridge humbucker. Here's my clean sound again. This is the bridge humbucker. And that's the next single coil. For this next part, I'm going to be using the neck pickup split into a single coil, and I'm going to play around with the volume pot to see how both pedals react to having input gain changes. So the Big Muff didn't react anywhere near as much to my guitar's volume as the Fuzz Face did. I had to wind the volume on my guitar almost all the way out before you started to notice a drop. And even then, the tone that I was left with was a little bit dull and lifeless. Whereas with the Fuzz Face, when you wind down that volume, you're still left with a really nice sort of crunchy tone there that's great for blues licks, and it's more responsive. In fact, that was my favorite tone with the Fuzz Face, which was to have the fuzz all the way up and then just using my volume pot to attenuate how much gain I wanted in my signal. The Big Muff just had so much sustain, and even if you have your amp at a low volume, you can hold those notes for forever and a day if you like. And it's able to do that because of how much it compresses the signal. You lose pretty much all of your dynamic response as a result, but the byproduct is that it sort of squishes the front end of your note a little bit, making your pick attack a lot smoother. So, I mean, if you're doing something really precise, you probably won't want a Big Muff, but it really is great for those legato, long-held notes, a la someone like Dave Gilmour. I think it's perfect for that. So the original Fuzz Faces were made by a company called Arbiter in England. They came out in the mid-60s. They were very quickly adopted by Jimi Hendrix when he went over to England in '66, and they became synonymous with him. Other famous players to use them include Eric Johnson, Joe Bonamassa, and also Dave Gilmour on the album Dark Side of the Moon. These pedals were initially designed with a pair of germanium transistors. These were quickly swapped out for silicon ones, partly because silicon is more stable and it's more consistent. But a lot of people hark back to the germanium ones because they just have an extra warmth that the silicon ones don't seem to have. Silicon ones tend to have more gain, but the germanium ones have just a bit more warm mid-range. It's a very harsh and crude circuit that really just destroys your guitar signal. And if you start to run it off a battery that's starting to run out, it changes the character again, which is why I really like the modified ones. So the Stiletto by Buffalo Effects and this one here, the Blues Pro by MI Audio. I think these just create a really sort of interesting texture, particularly by changing that bias control, or in this case it was the tone control, but it really gave it a really Velcro-y, harsh texture, which I really enjoyed. So the Big Muff pedals came out in the late 60s, and I suppose one of the biggest differences is that it uses 4 transistors, usually silicon. There have been op-amp ones, and they do make some limited runs of germanium transistor ones, but typically speaking, they use 4 silicon transistors. There's been no shortage of great players who have used the Big Muff. Dave Gilmour, again, springs to mind. Also Billy Corgan and also John Frusciante from the Red Hot Chili Peppers have used various iterations of the Big Muff. Now, Big Muff originally came out as the Triangle, which was its nickname. This is a reissue of the Triangle, and I like this pedal, but I really found that when I plugged in that Roshi pedal's Elf Sustainer, I thought this sounded like a toy in comparison. That really blew me away, that pedal. Yeah, I mean, I've never been a huge Big Muff fan, but that one was amazing to play. It was incredibly smooth. I think the tone control just was a little bit more refined than these ones. It wasn't quite as harsh, and it just sounded amazing. So thank you so much, Verley, for sending that out for me. If I had to pick another favorite out of those Big Muff pedals, it would be the Patriarch here by Pastfx. I did a review of this pedal a while back, but I think the extra control you have over the mid-range of this pedal, I think it's kind of sounds like you've got a tube screamer going into a Big Muff, and I kind of like that sound. So this one was great for single note lines because of that extra mid-range. And while I'm on the subject, I really want to thank Verley from Pastfx for sending me out the Elf Sustainer and the Stiletto and this a while back, but it really helped to make this video possible. So thank you very much. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. And if you want to see similar content, check out my other What's the Difference videos in my What's the Difference playlist. You can support this channel by subscribing and or going to the Middle Age Gear Junkie store and buying some merchandise. I've left some links there in the description. Other than that, my name is Jason. I hope you have a wonderful day. See you later.